Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for something new today. We're going to try this out and see how it goes. RT has a lot of smart people internally and externally within our network. We're going to try to utilize this network with an Ask the Expert session quarterly and hopefully help make everyone that much smarter. Most of our questions during these sessions come directly from our customers through our sales team. So thank you to them for these questions. This is so we know what our audience wants to learn more about and hopefully engage you a little bit more. So, speaking of really smart people today, we have Ron Cardwell, Director of Commodity Strategy. 2 years with RT. Before that, he was a lead advisor with Northwestern Mutual. Ron knows everything there is about oil commodities, and RT does a monthly webinar with close stakeholders. So, we're just going to try to take some of that and carry it over here. But don't worry, he's still doing his webinars. So hopefully we can kind of engage a new audience here and he can kind of continue his momentum with his webinars. So I have to say, in the last couple of weeks preparing for this session, I knew almost nothing about commodities, but Ron did a really great job of sending some information my way, and I've already gotten that much smarter. So hopefully people listening in can also get that much smarter. So before we do a deep dive into these topics, I want to get to know Ron a little bit better. So I'm going to start with a segment called Three Things. It's a short segment to kick things off. So we get to know Ron a little bit more beyond his job. So Ron, I say that, and then my first question is actually, what is your favorite thing about your job?
Okay. Yeah, so my favorite thing about my job, and I know it's hard for people to believe this, but I love talking about vegetable oil. I'm this weird person that exists in the world that nobody knows is around, but here I am. It's been my life for 23 years of my career, and honestly, I love talking to people about it because it's food. And food resonates with everyone. And we all eat it. We all enjoy it. We want to achieve certain things and we don't. And I just love talking about that and how oil can be a component in everyone's life. And it's that little specialty thing some of us have that nobody ever wants to talk about. So when you find a chance to be able to do it, you latch on. And that's what I've done.
I feel like that's so interesting though, because it's unique. And like, if you go to a party and you're like, I talk about cooking oil for a living, people are like, well, tell me more about that. Cause like, that's not like any other job that's out there, right? That's pretty cool. And we
Well,
all want a job that we love and that we're passionate about. And that
yeah.
passion kind of makes you that much better at your job, I think. So, second thing, tell me about a leader you admire and the qualities you hope to emulate in your life, both professionally and personally.
Oh gosh, that's a really tough one, Dave. I don't know that there's a specific leader I admire other than a quality in a leader that I'd look for. And the biggest quality I look for is a willingness to change your mind. And I think, we all talk about lifelong learning, and lifelong learning is awesome. You learn new things and you make yourself better. But the willingness to accept an ability to change your mind on something is probably the most valuable quality I think a person can have. And I think every good leader embraces that. And they say, you know what? I've looked at this, I formed an opinion, and it's different than what I thought before. And I'm willing to change to accept that. And I think if you look at most great leaders in the history of the world, they do adapt, and their willingness to make those adaptations is really what sets them apart from everyone else.
Yeah, so many qualities go into making a good or great leader, and that's definitely one of them. I was kind of hoping as a PR person, you take the low-hanging fruit and be like, I admire all the leaders at Restaurant
Oh,
Technologies.
wow. Well,
Of course we do. It goes
that
without
goes without
saying.
saying. That goes without
Yeah.
saying. Our leaders there actually are, quite honestly, they are really great. That's one of the reasons why I came on to RT is I saw the ideas behind them, got to speak with those leaders when I interviewed, and it really made me want to be part of that group. So it's low hanging fruit, and it's probably gratuitous for me to just throw that out there, and hope that whoever's giving me my review next year hears this. But it is true. We do have some great leadership at RT.
We do, we do. So more related to this session for the third thing is, what are some resources people can utilize to help educate them on commodities?
So there's several, I guess, that you can look for. So most of the commodities we deal with, and speaking specifically of vegetable oils, are traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It used to be called the Chicago Board of Trade. So I think anything with the CME that they issue on just general commodity reports is very valuable. Really, another one is the USDA. The USDA issues voluminous reports on all sorts of crop commodities and global production and things like that. Now, it can be intense because there's a lot of numbers in there and a lot of charting, but looking at that information is really the groundwork for where you are. And I think beyond that, when you're just reading reports about food consumption in various parts of the world, look, number one, look all over the world because it is a global economy. But look at those with an eye towards how does that affect what I'm doing? Because you'd be surprised how those ties really come in. So it's just really reading your everyday news about a rice shortage in Central Asia, and think about how does that affect our food supply here in North America, because it does. And so if you just do that, everything you read ends up being really educational for you. But I think sticking with crop production reports is good. Sticking with the trade and where it's done, which is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, that's valuable. But everything you read in the news every day is really a baseline of commodities, whether it's energy or food. It's always in there. And so evaluating it continuously is going to be valuable.
Yeah, I do think that is an interesting part of your job and commodities in general. Everything is kind of connected. Something happens in Asia, it's going to affect you here.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there was a
really
global internet outage today, and I was actually at the doctor this morning, and one of the patients said it was probably like one thing that went wrong and everything kind of shut down. And that's kind of true in tech, where like one line of code is wrong in 5,000 lines, and it's going to mess everything up. And it's very similar, I feel like, to commodities, where like one little thing could change everything else that's going on in the market, which is crazy.
I think people have a better understanding of that today than they did maybe 5 years ago, right? When we had the COVID pandemic hit globally, and we saw these supply lines really get squeezed on being able to move things around the world. And we saw prices increase on the craziest things, right? I mean, toilet paper is an easy one to come up with, right? I mean, things like that around the world really have effect locally. And I think most people got a good picture of that with their pocketbook when they saw food price increases and all these things happening that you couldn't really connect. So maybe we have a better understanding of it now, but when you see things, think of it in that term, and you'll probably get an even deeper understanding of these things.
Yeah, you open the door to toilet paper hoarders during the pandemic, and we don't have enough time in the show for how I feel about that. But we will get into some of our topics here. So first question from one of our customers is, tell me about the advantages and disadvantages of booking through one supplier, and if one is better than the other.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. You know, we obviously would love for all of our customers to just use us as a single source supplier and be happy about it. And I think there's real advantages to that. So we'll talk about the advantages first. Number one, reliability of service. When you are dealing with just one supplier, you can coordinate schedules much easier. You can coordinate volumes and your specific needs. And when you're truly working together, it's seamless. And there's nothing more valuable than uninterrupted service. So you can keep providing service to your customers. And so as a supplier, we can keep our facilities running because we have a reliable offtake as far as our vendors. So working with one, it has incredible value. Now, there's also risk. The risk is if you fully weight all of your reliance on that supplier and they encounter a problem, then is your supply going to get interrupted? If they have a facility goes down and that facility is the one supplying you everything, does it affect your production? So when we look at suppliers, you know, we buy bulk oil into our depots, right? When we look at suppliers, we do try to use a single source supplier for our one depot, but we have different suppliers for different depots. And the reason we do that is because the efficiencies I mentioned of making sure products delivered is there, and making sure we've got a seamless supply, that's all there. But in doing so, we also make sure that vendor has other avenues to be able to supply us. We also make sure we can get it from other avenues if we need to. We similarly do that with our depots. While all these restaurants are relying on one depot, everywhere around the country, we have another depot that's not terribly far away, where should a problem happen, we can always transfer things back over from one depot into the next to make sure that seamless transition is there. But it's only there when our customers are working with us and we work with them and we know all those interruptions and we can really prevent them. So there is a definite I think there's way more advantages than disadvantages, but there is an inherent risk of putting all your eggs in one basket, if you will. The key is to make sure you got lots of baskets, and you can really tie those problems together when they come around.
Yeah, and I think you and the RT team do a very good job of that to kind of help prevent those crises from happening, which is very important.
I think, yeah, I won't take any credit for that, because the folks who manage our depots and the folks who actually do the buying and coordinating with our suppliers, they're the ones who really make sure it happens. And it's kind of regular behind the scenes people that you don't really know, but they're the ones that deserve all the credit. The procurement group is stellar in that side.
Yeah. Yeah. The next question is a fair one, I think. And it's a question, if I own a restaurant, that I would hope to be able to take advantage of, because if, let's say, gas for your car is normally $4 a gallon, and one day you find it $3 a gallon, you want to be able to lock that in for a year or 2 years, and maybe forever, if it's $1 cheaper forever. So the next question that our customers have is, how long can you lock oil price in?
Well, oil is a commodity. I don't want to restate the obvious, but it is a commodity, which means it's only traded on these short time blocks, because what we have available this year could be vastly different than what's available next year. And as such, I mentioned the Chicago Mercantile Exchange before, which is where soybean oil is traded. That trades 15 months forward. So a year and a quarter basically is how far that trades forward. And that's where we can assure kind of price risk. There's always a way for us to go through and lock in prices for that 15-month time period to know that they'll be stable. Okay, so as such, I'd say in general, for a year forward, you can definitely lock prices down and know exactly where you are, and not face any increases or decreases or things like that. And that's usually across all commodities. Is generally a year to a year and a half is the range at which you could do that. Anything beyond there, you really are just taking a speculative risk, because there's no way to be sure of any supplies or any values beyond that time period.
Now, this isn't a question from our customers, but it is a question that I think is a natural kind of follow-up, is locking oil price in for a year a good strategy? Because 6 months, it could be cheaper. 3 months, it could be cheaper. Like, do you want to lock oil price in for a year, knowing that it could go down?
Yeah. I think whenever you decide to make a buying decision on oil, you're taking a risk. The risk is it could go higher if you don't lock it in. It could go lower if you do. So there's definitely a risk. But I think in general, when you're looking at what your cost components are for your restaurant or for your operation, if you know what those cost components are, it's always better than if you don't. Now, if prices are way too high right now and you do your calculations and you can't figure out how to make money, then maybe at that point it's not such a great idea, because you really need lower prices. It doesn't mean they can't still head higher. It just means you're locking in what you may know to be a loss. Now, I always say, does this make sense for you? If you buy oil at today's price for the next 12 months, can you move your mind over to something else? Does the cost of eliminating that in your thought process, is it worth it to you, knowing, okay, maybe it gets cheaper, maybe it doesn't, but I know I can operate at these costs, then it might be worth it. I think when oil is just one component of what you're doing running your business, you have to weigh the decision there on peace of mind, really, a peace of mind, and whether you think it's worthwhile to take the risk. But you are taking a risk one way or the other. Not deciding is still a decision.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because there's been a lot of conversations the last few years about buying versus renting, right? And I bought my first house a few years ago, and the good thing is that I know what my mortgage payment is going to be now for the next 30 years, give or take some taxes here and there. And I think that's very similar to what you're talking about. It's just the peace of mind. I have 2 kids now, the peace of mind of not having to worry about, is my rent going to go up next year? Is my rent going to go up in 2 years? And do I have to move, and the cost of all that? So I do think there is value in being able to lock that in for a given amount of time and just knowing your costs of your business. Because as you know, Restaurant Technologies controls the kitchen chaos. There's so much chaos in the business.
You
There's
took
one
the
less thing
words
to worry
right out
about.
of my mouth.
Yeah.
That is the premise on which we run our business. Is we want to alleviate that from your thought process. We want to
Right.
really make sure you don't have to think about oil. Like it's just there when you need it, and the used stuff is taken away when you don't need it, and you just have a consistent supply. And if part of that is now you don't even have to worry about the price, great. If the price is something you want to pay attention to, that's okay too. But peace of mind goes a long way when
Hmm.
you're talking about something like that. It's just an ingredient cost, and you're going to have it no
Right.
matter what.
And just planning, there's just one less thing that's volatile that you have to worry about down the road. So the next
Yeah.
question from one of our customers is, are there volume discounts on oil?
This is one that I get quite a bit because it seems to make sense, right? If I buy 10 pounds of something, it's one price, but if I buy 1,000 pounds, surely it's got to be cheaper. Well, the caveat there is we're talking about a commodity, and a
Mhm.
commodity is what it is. There's one value for the commodity, no matter how much you buy. Now, where you get cost savings are in things like transportation, packaging, handling costs, if you will, of that commodity. So I could tell you that if you buy 1 pound of soybean oils or you buy 1,000,000 pounds of soybean oil, there's no difference in the price. The
Mhm.
difference comes in if you buy 1 pound, it's going to be bottled in a little bitty bottle, and it's going to take a whole bunch of cases of things to move. You buy 1,000,000 pounds, it's going to come in a railroad car. And so there's a lot of cost savings in transportation and handling, right? So that's what we get. So when we buy from our suppliers, we're getting volume discounts because we take delivery in big bulk tank trucks, right? So they come to our depot and they unload a big bulk tank truck. And instead of getting it in these little amounts where it's packaged into jugs and then put into cardboard boxes and delivered. So we take that bulk savings and that's what we give to our customers to say, and really our customers are taking bulk as well, right? We're taking
Mhm.
just smaller bulk trucks and delivering to their tanks. So where we save the money is on the handling and the packaging and all of the transportation costs that are involved in that. Because the product itself, there's no differentiation between a pound of it or 1,000,000 pounds. It's going to cost the same. I always like to use the gold argument as one of these here is go buy an ounce of gold and now go see if you can get a discount on a pound of gold. No,
Mhm.
they just multiply it by
Yeah.
16, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just going to be the same because that's the nature of commodities is they just
Yeah.
have a steady price. There's no volume discount for them. So you get discounts in transportation, handling, and all the things you do to it instead of just the base price of it.
Mhm. Awesome. And a follow-up question to that is, are bulk oil contracts cheaper than jug?
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no doubt about it. As I mentioned, when you get a jug, you're taking that same bulk oil and you're putting it into a plastic container, and that plastic container is then wrapped in a cardboard box so it can be shipped effectively. Well, the cost of that container and that box they add cost to the oil. So when you're getting bulk delivery, you are definitely saving those costs. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why sometimes those costs can be varied. And I know all my sales professionals out there are probably barking at me right now saying, but wait, we see it all the time. And it's true, there can be cost differentiations in the marketplace. There's lots of things that can contribute to that. One of the primary ones is a lot of companies that sell bulk or either sell jugs of oil also carry a lot of other products and they'll use the oil as what's called a loss leader. Every restaurant needs it, so they'll just supply it and they'll just be really inexpensive. But they want you to buy the garlic from them. They want you to buy their
Mhm.
bread dough. They want you to buy
Mhm.
all these other products that have huge profit margins on them. So they kind of do what's called bundling. Here, we'll give you really cheap oil and you just buy all these other products, right? And so if you look at the oil price compared to bulk price, you'll think, that, that's cheaper. What gives? And it's
Mhm.
usually attributable to something like that. There's also things like timing of pricing and things like that that can come into play. But as a whole, if you compare apples to apples and you say buy a jug of oil or buy bulk, it's going to be cheaper in bulk for those really simple reasons.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but you probably aren't buying just oil from those vendors that you mentioned that may be
Yeah,
taking that as a loss, right? You're buying
yeah,
all of these other things to make it up.
yeah. You're right. You probably are buying all those other things, and I guess what I would tell any purchasing manager at a restaurant if you're getting a really below market value on your oil, you should be asking that supplier about the pricing on all your other products, because they're probably overcharging you on that, because they don't operate to run their businesses with losses. So they're making big margins and big profits on all those other things. So yeah, that's usually the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're probably not only going to sell you oil, right? If you sign a contract with them, you can't sign for just oil. It's always other things too.
And yeah, I think that's probably another good test is when you get those quotes, say, oh, that's great. How about if you just give me the oil? And then see what the price, what the price is.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
It probably will.
Yeah. Similar to the Costco $1.50 hot dog. Get them through the door.
You got
$1.50 hot dog and soda, but we're going to make up for it in the back end.
They don't put that Costco counter where it's accessible from the outside, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many hot dogs they sell if you just had a window outside and you could walk up to it? No, you got to go through the whole temptation of Costco to get to it.
Yeah, and they have admitted that it's lost them millions of dollars, but they make it up in other ways. So here's a fun question to kind of close for the cooks at home and people like me who may not be as well versed in oil and commodities as someone like you. I love cooking at home. And so there are times when I want to cook healthy, make a nutritious meal. My wife likes to eat healthy. And then there are times where I'm hosting a bunch of friends, the 4th of July barbecue, Memorial Day barbecue. I want to fry some chicken. And flavor and taste to me is most important, because I don't want people to come to my house and be like, that food was not good. Right. So what is the best oil to cook with when you're trying to eat healthy, kind of just at home with your family, and the best oil to cook when you want that bold flavor?
Well, I'll start that answer off by saying it depends, but it depends on all those things you just mentioned. What are you trying to do, right? So let's look at the health conscious side. On the health conscious side, it's really about something that accentuates the food you're trying to serve. So let's just say you're making a nice salad. You want a very light liquid oil to make that dressing with, and probably something low in saturated fats, or maybe something that has low tocopherols, or something along those sense, or maybe it's expeller pressed, or all those fun things. So it's a whole different segment of oils than frying oils, because frying is going to have really intense heat added to it, right? So I would say in general, and this is just my opinion on light cooking oils like quick saute or something like that. Look, a soybean oil, just a liquid soybean oil or liquid canola oil, they're so multi-purpose for those functions, and really for our at-home use. They were applicable across so many more spectrums that I think those are good choices. Now, there's nothing wrong with sunflower oil or even avocado oil, grapeseed oil. All those are nice oils. They just get more expensive, right? And if that's what you want, and that gives a flavor profile that you like, that's good too. It's also important to think about flavor profile, because oils do have different flavors. In the general industry, one of the things that's looked for is neutral flavors in oils, where you don't taste the oil, you taste the food. And that's where soybean and canola come in. Generally, you don't taste those oils. When you start getting into things like olive oil, if you have an extra virgin olive oil, you definitely have that flavor there. Same thing with avocado oil, peanut oil. They impart flavor, right? So think about the food you're making and think about the flavor you want that food to have, and whether you want to add or neutralize. Now let's turn to your fried chicken. Now, fried chicken is a completely different, or any fried product is completely different. And this is where probably our customers would resonate, is they're frying. They're putting it in harsh conditions, really high heat, dumping food in there that has a lot of moisture, which water will destroy an oil faster than anything. So you want to think, how much of it am I going to be cooking, right? If you're just doing one batch, it's a different choice. If you're going to be having friends over and doing a fish fry, you will need an oil that lasts longer, right? Mm-hmm. So again, a general purpose oil is going to be something like our RT Gold. It's a soybean oil, and it's been blended to a way to where it lasts a lot longer than if it was just liquid oil. So it's going to hold up a lot longer, and it won't impart flavor to your food because it's very neutral. Mm-hmm. But if you could use something like a high oleic canola oil, which has been designed to hold those high temperatures, that's okay too. But I think it's a lot of long answers. And this is when I say that depends, it means I've got 17 answers for you, Dave. So we'll narrow it down and say at home cooking, soybean or canola oil is probably a good choice for very light sauteing, very It's applicable for salads, things like that. If you're going to be doing more frying, you probably want to go to something maybe like a high oleic canola oil, or actually grapeseed oil is a fantastic frying oil as well too, and it'll hold up. Corn oil actually is, believe it or not, one that's great for at-home use. Industrial use, not so much, but at-home use corn oil is probably a good choice too. But it has a different flavor. Your question though is applicable across even more than just our at-home usage. I mean, we all have our at-home uses, but these are the same questions chefs at the restaurants ask, right?
Yeah.
But a chef has a certain goal they're trying to achieve, and it's important for us to understand that goal they want to get to, so then we can recommend the right oil. Usually, a broad applicable oil is what will work best, but sometimes they have very specific needs, and that's what we're there to help them with. We're there to help them figure out what it is that they need to accomplish, because different tools accomplish different tasks.
Yeah, next time I'm at Costco, I am going to text you, because when I buy olive oil, even olive oil, there's like 7 different kinds of olive oil. I'm always wondering what the difference is, because the one from Spain or Italy or wherever is cheaper than the stuff from other parts of the country. And then there's the extra virgin olive oil, and then there's it's like a science class.
Olive oil is a totally different animal, because there's so many local protections on it, and there's so many labeling guidelines on it. And, Greek versus Spanish versus Italian, they're very protective of what you can do. But honestly, if you bought one of each and tasted them all, they all taste completely different too. So there are different traits about them as well too.
All right, so I think that kind of closes us up for today. Ron, I really appreciate your time, your knowledge, and I think, I learned something in the last few minutes that we spent together, and every time I talk to you, feel a little bit smarter. And if you guys are listening and you like the show, share it out on social media and send us a message. We're always looking for feedback to get a little better. Our first session here, so, hopefully we get better as we go, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you, Dave, for letting me do this. As I said at the beginning of this, I love talking about this stuff. So you're giving me an outlet for half an hour to be able to just talk to you about things that I like. But I'll tell everybody that's listening as well too. I'm available for anybody at RT. Shoot me an email, give me a call. I love talking about this, and I mean it. So whether there's with you or a customer, or you're just trying to get a little knowledge and insight, please feel free to tap a resource that's ready to help you out.
Absolutely. So R Cardwell at rti-inc.com if current customer has questions. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.